I was literally hoping that this special would have come out earlier this month rather than later, but thanks to the amazing Digital Circus episode 3 coming out earlier, being horror-related while doing the reaction out of, I would have skipped one day if that didn't came out. But since it did, the schedule is fine without missing a day, but regardless, I am still going to review this because I still promised on reviewing it months ago when it comes to doing these videos. And I'm just gonna say this right now, Close Encounters of the Nerd Kind is a better 44-minute special than Scored, but that doesn't automatically mean that this Halloween special is superior over Tricked or even Great Lakes Freakout. The premise is that Lincoln is going trick-or-treating with his friends as the Planet Protection Patrol, which, ironically, there are 6 characters, and since that Lincoln has 5 friends, he and his friends are able to become one of the characters from that franchise. While Lincoln and his friends are going trick-or-treating, his sisters are performing the traditional haunted house routine that they do every Halloween. But at the same time, with the many times they've done this, no one, especially Darcy, is afraid of what's happening inside of the Loud House. And that includes Lincoln, since that he's not terrified, which surprises me, but I think that they're literally trying way too hard to set up what is going to happen in the second half of this special. I would discuss more about the plot, but I may discuss more about it later, because this special also includes Chandler and his friend Trent, who doesn't contribute to much, but considering that Chandler is part of this special, it's really saying a lot of what is going to happen, and this is yet again a character causing a problem, but be thankful it's not Lincoln, his friends, nor his sisters. It's literally Chandler, and it's no surprise considering that what we're going to be witnessing in the second half of this special. But let's get into the issues that I have that are mostly minor. And I do mean that literally. This special's way of showcasing a different IP as part of the Loud House, which is Planet Protection Patrol, which is Lincoln and his friends dressing up as the characters from the franchise, is good, but the way I look at it, if it wasn't for Zach bringing his equipment that has so much power to it, honestly, if they have these characters dress up as something else, they probably won't be able to fit the setting of what this special is trying to explore. I don't have anything against the Planet Protection Patrol, considering that it's somewhat nice that they're still coming up with new ideas, but judging of how that they're trying way too hard to make Lincoln's friends nerdy and geeky to the point that Lincoln's sisters make fun of him, which I'm gonna get to soon. And of course, Chandler being the reason why this huge conflict in the second half is happening. It just makes me to believe that if other characters see these characters like this, they would have been respectful, considering at this point, I don't think that Lincoln's score is that rude towards Lincoln and his friends, considering that the people who are doing the action news thing that they've always done, and the fact that, honestly, when those mean-spirited moments in Season 1, keep in mind it was from Season 1, and considering that these characters never interact with other kids from no school aside from Chandler and Trent, it just really gave me the impression that they're trying way too hard to make Lincoln's friends weak, when in reality, we literally have one of their friends, mainly his parents, are into aliens and whatnot, to the point that it just makes me question onto how no one is looking into the point of view of Zack when it came to the Zack Attack episode, which I'm gonna get to later because it does contribute of this episode contradicting that episode, but there was more of reasons onto why that this special is considered the weakest of Tricked and Great Lake City, but it's still better than a really haunted Loud House. When it comes to the Loud Sisters making fun of Lincoln and his friends in their costumes to the point that Lynn suggested that they need protection, I'm going to assume that they're really trying too hard to make the Loud Sisters feel bad for Lincoln in order to have a moment towards the end, but I'm gonna get to that later because at this point, this is literally the same material that we've seen in the past when it comes to Lincoln being into hobbies that the sisters aren't interested in, and they make fun of him. And at this point, well, regardless if that's what siblings do, we've seen all this before when it came to Lincoln being into Ace Savvy. And at this point, it's becoming really redundant that these characters are just doing the same thing repeatedly and just not being better people. Like, it's just becoming so redundant to the point that you're not convincing me that Lincoln should be with his sisters when his friends are at least showing some sort of respect towards him. Because at this point, if anyone, and I mean anyone, is willing to dress up the characters that I like from a franchise on Halloween, I would have respected them more than any of my siblings. Because at this point, this is the only conversation that Lincoln and the Loud Sisters have up until the ending of the special. And with this being 44 minutes, honestly, this subplot, if you could call it that, has no purpose whatsoever. And if it's supposed to be there just so that there's a moment towards the end, again, I'm gonna get to that just how all this just didn't really fit together due to them doing the same thing again in the past. I feel like that whenever they attempt to do these types of plots that centers around Lincoln and his friends, it's supposed to be a farce when it comes to Lincoln and his friends go through what Lincoln went through when it comes to his sisters making fun of him, but considering that they just don't even bother to make these characters somewhat remember anything of what they went through in the past, to the point that it just makes all this difficult to adjust to. Honestly, this would have been better off if the Loud Sisters weren't even characters in this, and the reason why they're characters in this in some capacity, especially the second half of the special, is mainly the fact they're wearing Halloween costumes, which isn't a problem. It's one thing that characters need to wear costumes during the Halloween season, so it's justified, but at this point, every time I watch this special involving Lincoln and his friends, it really feels like that they're focusing on the chemistry, even though that most of the time they're doing comedic jokes, which sometimes land, but at the same time, when people say that these characters are really stupid and go way too far, at times I can understand some occasions, but in this special, I don't. At the end of the day, Lincoln's friends, well, minus Clyde, are mostly kids that may have some intelligence to them, but at the same time, they're mostly kids. And whenever I defend kids when it comes to cartoons, it's mainly the fact that they don't go too far on their stupidity in some occasions. And with this special not going too far on their stupidity, it really kind of sums up onto why I found this special at least tolerable than anything that I've went through from school. But let's go into the second half of the special that introduces aliens. I really feel like that this is contradictory towards the season 5 episode Zack Attack. Well, Zack is trying to prove that aliens exist, and well, it did show that there were aliens towards the end of that episode. It was Flip the one who made the people believe that there were aliens, since that he was using a drone as a UFO. Honestly, I really feel like that episode, while being overlooked when it comes to ex-Loudhouse fans giving up on this show when Schooled came out, the way I see it, this episode really gave me the impression that they wanted to showcase Zach's character to the point that they found his hobbies and treats, which is why they made an episode out of this. But when it comes to the special of Close Encounters of the Nerd Kind, they went way too hard for his character, to the point that even though that his stupidity in this isn't as bad as the other times that we've seen his character in the past, but I'm going to assume that the reason why they didn't make him the main character is because they know for a fact that he won't be able to carry the entire special, which is why Lincoln's friends are there to help out the one time, with them being the main characters of the main plot. But now that this franchise has officially introduced aliens, honestly, they could have done a much more better plot, considering that the aliens in this were only here mainly because of someone who made them abduct humans in the first place. But with the fact that Zach's parents made actual guns to take down aliens, to the point that it's possible for kids to use guns during Halloween, to use guns to defend themselves, that goes way more far-fetched to basically anything else in the special, including what ends up happening in the UFO that the characters are in. Honestly, guys, it's one thing that you want to do these types of ideals, since that aliens are also a Halloween material that we've seen in other Halloween episodes from other shows, but when it comes to the Loudhouse, this is way too literal, to the point that if people are not into Zach's character, then they're gonna have a hard time adjusting to basically anything else in this entire special. As we get into the UFO, honestly, this is supposed to be something that's supposed to be serious, but spoilers, my point of view of the No Time for a Spy finale didn't really win me over when it came to the climax. This didn't really win me over because the biggest issue that I have with these characters being into these situations is that they treat all of this as it's normal, and they're not fully aware of anything over the top, to the point that they just crest in life. Like, when I'm gonna get to the people criticizing this special about this issue, because that's what I've been waiting for to discuss, what really makes all this less impactful is that the characters barely react to basically anything of what is happening in front of their face. Like, I can understand characters from other shows would react to some scenarios to this, but at the same time, they do fit into the world building. Mainly My Life as a Teenage Robot, well, Brad was driving the UFO, which is similar to what Lincoln did towards the end of the special, but when you really take into the consideration that everyone is just not really phased of what is happening in the surroundings, it kind of devalues the slice of life material that this show somewhat has in some episodes in the newer seasons. But the way I see it, it just makes me to believe that they're not really capable of understanding what's really big or not anymore. And for me personally, that really takes away the down-to-earth mentality a lot more. When, if you include fantasy elements or any of these types of elements into this show, you can at least have these characters be down-to-earth and being extremely paranoid. But the fact that these characters are not aware of what is happening right now with them being abducted into outer space, how can you make me feel sympathy towards the sisters and other characters being on the edge of dying in outer space while Lincoln and his friends are controlling the UFO despite being underage? Because if you ask me, that's something that really bugs me a lot more than Lincoln and his friends controlling the UFO, considering of how much that these characters aren't taking anything in their environment seriously due to the direction that this show has taken. Like, it was far-fetched when the Louds family are going through scenarios when it comes to dragons and magic from the Loud Test movie despite being non-canon, which I'm still finding a difficult time to believe, and time travel when they go through time travel. And that episode is one of the worst episodes in the entire series. For me personally, this is just really something that doesn't really bother me as much, considering that I've seen this show having zombies and all this stuff, and the shocking thing is, people still enjoy those types of elements when it comes to zombies and ghosts, but they just draw the line when it comes to time travel, fantasy elements from the Loud Test movie, and now the aliens from this special. Which brings me to the topic that I've been waiting to discuss ever since I've saw this tweet. This tweet from a person who is possibly an ex-Loud House fan made this tweet of the Halloween special, and they just have a blank expression, mainly a frowny face, that this special has actual aliens abducting everyone. In the climax featured 11-year-old boy, despite the fact that Lincoln is 12 years old, piloting a UFO through a meteor shower while it headed towards Earth. And he played a clip of SpongeBob saying "what?" to the point that it's them expressing that this show used to be down to earth, grounded with reality, and it jumped the shark with fantasy elements. You know, I totally understand that people cannot stand the fantasy elements in the show when they grew up with the old seasons and including the 4th season, but at this point, when this critique keeps bringing up 3 years or 4 years when it comes to everything that we've went through, honestly, it's becoming a redundant criticism to the point that they're just literally reinforcing the notion of the criticisms of this show, and yet it's becoming redundant because them introducing aliens, I'm not on board with it, but does that really make the lore of this show any more broken than what we've seen when it comes to dragons and magic powers, time travel, and zombies that some people actually enjoy, especially longtime Loud House fans? I'm not even going to side with these people anymore when it comes to this criticism, because it was one thing with them complaining about the Loud Test movie in Time Trap, but the fact that some of these people actually enjoyed ghosts and zombies despite being different material when it comes to fantasy elements or supernatural stuff, and when they draw the line to this stuff, honestly, what do you really want the lore of this show to be? Like the original seasons? Yes, but at the same time, I don't even find these issues a problem anymore, and it's honestly becoming pathetic that I know full well that the people who watch this special are reinforcing this notion too well. I'm convinced that they watched the Loud Test movie and Time Trap, and they just bring up the old criticism as if it's still brand new when it's been like 3 or 4 years since that this show has been doing these gimmicks, to the point that the newer ones aren't as problematic as the older ones. The issue I have with this criticism that people keep bringing up is because the reviewers that review the Loud House, mainly the Loud House critic and Steam Team WK, talk about these issues, mainly the Loud House critic, they mostly say the same thing over and over again, to the point that they have nothing else new to say, to the point that with them just expressing the criticism out loud, if it's supposed to get into the minds of Nickelodeon, which I will admit, I was on board when I first watched those reviewers back in 2022, but now, since that they haven't moved forward from this criticism, honestly, it just really gave me the understanding that the Loud House show are moving forward with different ideals, despite jumping the shark, which for me personally, I don't even think that aliens abducting people is considered jumping the shark or Lincoln driving, because I'm looking into the characters a lot more than basically the same criticism that I've been hearing over and over again. The material that they did involving supernatural stuff and fantasy elements in episodes like Ghost, Bizarratorium, Time Trap, among some others, including the Classic Contest movie that some people still enjoy, honestly, if you are not on board with this and you prefer the down-to-earth material from the earlier seasons and you miss that, I understand where you're coming from. However, whenever you completely have these characters do other stuff to the point that you're not expecting this show to do other ideals, and whenever you get these types of ideals, you end up complaining about it, honestly, it just makes me believe that if this show still had a creative direction, which I honestly hope it was the case when it came to season 4 starting, I really feel like that by time these fantasy elements or supernatural stuff isn't really an issue anymore, when people are literally having second thoughts on, oh, this one is bad, but this one is fine because the episode's good when it came to other aspects, which I'm trying to believe that, but the fact that they're still including this criticism regardless and just instantly ignoring everything else when it comes to characters and whatnot, it just makes me believe that the creative direction of this show's introducing fantasy elements and supernatural stuff just makes me believe that if this show was down to earth in some other way without the fantasy elements, I'm pretty sure that people will probably expect it a little bit more, considering that this show has been doing the same ideals, which is difficult to overlook, but I'm not really blaming the show anymore, because when people are just addressing the same criticism over and over again, I really don't even feel like that the Loud House is overstaying its welcome or just jumping the shark entirely, like I've seen people talk about when it came to me being new to the show, because at this point, it really feels like that people are just boasting about their ego being better than the Loud House, when it's just a show, to the point that it just makes me see a lot wrong with the people in the fandom, rather than the people expressing other issues of the fandom that I'm not on board with. Seriously, those are the reason why I'm not on board with people critiquing this show when it comes to LS Mark's video that he released back in the summer, to the point that the entire video is just the same material and is just mainly a target towards the fans when it comes to them being weird, which at this point I've been hearing weird so many times that it's just becoming really repetitive, to the point that the people calling out its fandom as the issue when they're not doing anything harmful towards real people is really saying something that this entire fandom is just bragging about them being better than everyone else, which really translates from the show where the characters are trying to be better with each other by doing the same thing. And in all honesty, I'm not really on board with LS Mark stating that he apologizes to some fans of the Loud House, considering at this point these types of material are getting really old, to the point that the truth itself is not the answer to everything, despite being the truth itself. But that's a topic for another time, especially the fandom being two-wheeled, mainly when it comes to the shipping and shipping a little too hard, if you know what I mean. Getting back into this special, the stakes of Lincoln driving the UFO is meant to be jumping the shark, but considering that they really wanted to do an alien episode of some sorts, and this is the way of exploring that, honestly, Lincoln driving the UFO with his friends helping out, if you ask me, how can you instantly make me believe that Lincoln and his friends aren't being the heroes of Warrior Worlds of some sort when it comes to the other contributions that they did in the past? And this brings up another issue that I have with the people criticizing Lincoln being terrible in some episodes despite saving the day towards the end. Mainly the Loud House movie that some people still cannot stand Lincoln's character. Because whenever I look at Lincoln and his friends controlling the UFO, this is way worse than basically anything of what they went through, and that includes the climax of No Time to Spy. They're in outer space and they could crash into an asteroid, which is 1,000 times worse than the Loud Sisters and Lincoln, mainly half of them, causing injuries towards Flip from House Flip. So you can't expect me to believe that Lincoln is terrible when he manages to save everyone else's lives, especially since that he wasn't responsible of causing everyone to get abducted by aliens. If anything, it just makes me to believe that whenever all this, where the characters are not being faced of what's really happening, honestly, that really drags this special down for me personally when it comes to the characters' interactions, especially when it comes to the Loud Sisters making fun of Lincoln and his friends early on, and then apologizing to them later when it came to Lincoln saving them inside of a UFO, nearly on the edge of dying. If anything, they're not treating death as a problem as much as people have taken Flip's injuries and House Flip seriously. This is way too difficult for me to be on board with, to the point that it just makes me to believe that Link and his friends deserve to be acknowledged for what they did, Roman Reigns style. It's either the fact that they just probably don't want to tone down the narrative in order to make these characters more nerdy and pathetic than they were, but if you ask me, I'm mostly focused on the fact that these characters are not being remembered of the accomplishments that they did, and I'm not letting out Lincoln's friends since that they still contributed on saving everyone from being fuel of the UFO, which led to the UFO crashing, and the fact that Lincoln manages to land the UFO next to his house, honestly, regardless if this show is jumping the shark, what else do you want these characters to do, honestly? Like, do you want them to save someone from getting murdered? Because that is the last thing that this show would do when it comes to Nickelodeon standalone. Like, Nickelodeon is a terrible company when it comes to live-action sitcoms, when it comes to Predators and whatnot, but they still won't show murder in a show like this. Even though that they did include Lincoln going through the climax in the finale of No Time to Spy, but at the same time, I'm not really on board with it. So you're gonna have to wait on what I feel about that once my review of it comes out first thing in November. The thing I want to bring up is that whenever this show tries to do something that involves fantasy elements and supernatural stuff, they don't go all out with it. And even when they do, when it comes to Lincoln saving everyone else's lives, including his friends contributing, it really doesn't even matter because they act like it's a normal thing. And at this point, I'm mostly focusing on that than the people criticizing this show jumping the shark non-stop, which at this point, I'm really focusing on their critiques as the issue rather than the show itself. But I will say this though, Chancellor is the worst character in this entire special, and it's not because that he caused the aliens to abduct everyone in Royal Woods. Not really everyone, but mainly Lincoln's siblings, his parents, and other characters. It's mainly the fact that when he gets abducted by aliens, he is the most unfazed person throughout this entire situation, even more than Lola, to the point that, honestly, it makes me to believe that they're showing no emotion from Chandler other than being a jerk, even in the most dire of situations. Like, even Lynn Jr., who calls him out, even is fully aware of what is really going on. When it came to Lincoln saving her life, more than Lincoln saving Chandler and his friends, because whenever I completely look of how much that all this is a demonstration of how much that Chandler being a jerk just showcases of him being the problem of the episode that has nothing to do with him getting everyone into trouble, and yet he gets off scot-free other than being called out by Lynn and Lori. This show isn't even trying to have the characters get any consequences from their actions at this point. And even if there were some consequences of their actions, it doesn't change the fact that whenever they just skip out on that, it just really makes me the belief that Chandler really gets off easily, despite the fact that he is responsible of getting people abducted by aliens. And when there's only two characters, Lori and Lynn, calling them out, honestly, is that really a better job than basically having the characters putting their foot down while instantly making a stand with Lincoln, who saved their lives? That really makes everything in this really difficult to feel any sympathy towards these characters. Because when you have these characters not being fully aware of the surroundings, including Chancellor, who is the worst, it just really makes me to believe that the entire focus is just to make an alien special in the same vision of them making Time Trap on doing a Back to a Future reference by having the characters doing time travel for the sake of making that episode work without having the characters being fully aware of the surroundings and just being dumbed down. And since that this special doesn't have the characters being dumbed down, it just makes me to believe that when they're better than how they were from Time Trapped, they're not doing anything more with them, to the point that it just makes me convinced that them normalizing what they're seeing in front of them isn't making anything better. And while it's not jumping the shark on these aspects, it just makes me to believe that I would have written this much more better if I wrote this episode, which last year I've published my Loud House fanfic over the Phobia Terror, and it really displayed Chandler at his worst when it comes to traumatizing Lincoln and Clyde. And if you ask me, the comeuppance that he gets towards the end of my fanfic was a lot more justified than what he ends up getting in this. Granted, what they would do in this episode wouldn't go too hard, but at the same time, they should have given Chandler some kind of comeuppance, considering I went a little too extreme when it comes to my Over the Phobia Terror fanfic that I've uploaded last year, because let's just say that Gore Jordan gave Chandler a beating that wouldn't be justified in this special, because I know for a while that none of these characters would beat up Chandler in some other capacity, considering that this has nothing to do with relationships, unlike my fanfic. I'm a Lincoln and Gore Jordan fan at the end of the day, in case you aren't aware of that. There were other aspects in this when it comes to Flip being mostly a character that is the only one who didn't get abducted by aliens, but regardless if it's mainly a factor of the characters using Flip's equipment, not really equipment, but mainly his candy that managed to break some stuff inside of the UFO that manages to save everyone else, there's really nothing else I can say about that other than the fact that they're just trying to fill in the one time of 44 minutes. I don't have a problem with Flip in this like I do from House Flip, but at the same time, they're literally trying way too much favoritism towards him, especially his raccoon friend. So the only thing that I can mention is that there's a character from Season 3 that returned. Darcy returned in this when it comes to being the trick-or-treater in the Loud House, but she did return earlier in this season, so the character who returned from Season 3 is the officer from We to Her Rights. Honestly, it's somewhat of a breath of a fresh air for a character to return, but compared to her writing from Season 3 where she released Rita when it came to family, they're really trying way too hard to make every single character returning have a goofy side to the character despite being adults, and the fact that this character is a police officer, honestly, I find it really weird to consider on the fact that though making a character from Season 3 who is extremely strict when it comes to laws have this goofy side when it comes to the hobby that Lincoln and his friends are in. Granted, it's not the worst thing I've seen from this special, but if this is a way of this show returning characters, I'm really praying that other characters from previous seasons return when it came to a goofy side of the character when it comes to hobbies. I mean, granted I'm not on board with this, but I'm on board on what they're going to be doing if they're going to have return characters from previous seasons, because if it's a way of continuing the show, then it's the only thing that I'm on board with. Well, with a better direction that this show is probably never going to take, but it's still something I'm looking forward to from this show. But yeah, that's literally everything I have to say about this special itself. It's not the worst Halloween special, it's better than a really haunted Loud House, but compared to Tricked and Great Lakes Freakout, you can watch those two specials for the price of one, which with this being 44 minutes long, you can watch 2 episodes for the price of one when it comes to 1 hour. And as much as I really feel like that this special isn't the worst thing ever, I don't even consider this as jumping the shark, because at this point I'm really critiquing the criticisms of people making towards this special, because while this isn't the best Halloween special and you will rather sit through Tricked and Great Lakes Freakout, you can't deny that this special is any way, shape, and form worse than Scored, because we can all agree that you would rather sit through this because the characters aren't getting tortured, mainly Lincoln, when it comes to unfair misery, and honestly, if the only criticism that you have towards this is that this is somewhat boring when it comes to Lincoln's friends, it's at least the best of what this show can offer. But I'm not gonna lie, it would have been better off if it had a better direction when it came to the criticisms that I've discussed in this review, because I really feel like that if you introduce aliens into the Loud House series, you should have done a much more better job, because you would have made the stakes a lot more better when it comes to the characters going through these scenarios, and the more I think about it, it really makes me to believe that this would have been worthwhile to make Lincoln as a hero alongside with his friends, to the point that it would have made them somewhat redeemable. But since that this show can't make up its mind on making the characters likable or hateable, it just makes me to believe that what I've seen throughout this entire special is mainly experimenting things but not even trying, and I'm not expressing this as white noise at this point. I really feel like if this show is going to have another 44-minute special, It could be either Christmas or Valentine's Day, but my vote is Christmas. Hopefully, if they can make a 44-minute Christmas special next year, well, they actually have the characters go through so much emotions. But since that they don't do emotions towards the characters that much, I'm starting to think that the emotions that I've seen from the characters, especially in the earlier seasons, are really difficult to adjust now, considering that that's mostly the factor of making these episodes/specials work, mainly 11 rounds of leaping. I really feel like that with this being a Halloween special when it comes to characters being scared and whatnot, and their way of introducing aliens could be a major factor for these characters to be afraid. But since that they didn't capitalize it that much in that the aliens are friendly, it just makes it difficult to believe that the lore of this show, while broken, isn't entirely broken from this episode. Just really feels too random to the point that they're not treating random as a weird thing anymore, to the point that the weird stuff that we express from this show, not the fandom, but from this show in particular, including its spin-offs, is just mainly them expressing weirdness in their own way, which Nickelodeon is known for, but if you ask me, I really got the impression that the weirdness in the Loud House is just so lost. It's just a lost cause. That's basically my opinion on the weirdness in this show, is that it's a lost cause, that it can't get any weirder, and when it gets weirder, it's still a lost cause. Maybe it's just me having a different mindset than the people who are used to be fans from this show, but even if I do have that type of mindset, I still won't make the same criticisms over and over again, because it would get tiring to the point that I'm just literally just reinforcing the notion rather than the show reinforcing its own notion. So, Close Encounters of the Notes kind is the most mediocre Halloween special that I've seen, basically from any other Halloween material from any other show. And as for a Loud House material, you would rather sit through the Cross-Gantes Candy Goblin episode, because while that it has issues of its own, it's shorter and it's somewhat worth seeing through, considering that even if it's not better than Tricked, it's at least something that I can understand people finding some kind of enjoyment out of. But when it comes to this, they could find other ways to make this better, and for me personally, my perspective of the issues of this special somewhat translates to my critiques towards the Loud House movie No Time to Spy that I am going to review first thing in November. I'm just saying, I'm really feeling that this special would have been something else if they actually took the characters slightly seriously, because judging of how the one time of this from beginning to end is mainly characters not being aware of their environment, honestly, what else would they feel if they actually took the direction of fandoms doing incredibly weird things when it comes to shipping and whatnot, if those type of laws don't exist when it comes to TV programming? It's disturbing, yes, but at the same time, I can instantly see Loud House being the type of show that would be qualified for that. Again, I am going to discuss that type of material sometime in the future, but it's way low on my list. So I'm giving this special a 5.5 out of 10. There's one more thing I need to address when it comes to me coming back to this show in the new year of 2025. The Europe road trip episodes, and the first episode centers around Luna and Lincoln, and it's a double-length episode, as in a 22-minute episode, not an 11-minute episode. And I am going to watch that episode, and if the episode is what I hope it is, I am going to make my review out of it and upload it one of the first videos in 2025. No matter if the episode hasn't been released in the United States yet. But well, by that time that is. Because that's literally the only thing that really made me look forward to when it comes to the show, aside from characters returning, and I really hope that that episode at least has a Lincoln and Luna bonding experience, because if it isn't and it ends up being like Bizarre Toying where it's not a Lincoln and Rita episode, then there was an issue that I have with the show that I am going to bring up if the episode itself doesn't have that. But I can only hope it would once I see the episode itself. The chemistry between Lincoln and Luna is one of my favorites from the show, and for Bros who are about to walk all the way back in season 1 is the most ageist episode throughout the entire show. Really sums up a lot that if they don't include the chemistry in the episodes, I can understand ex-fans of the Loud House are coming from, and I side with them the most when it comes to that criticism in particular, since that this show is really lacking on Lincoln's chemistry with his sisters, and Luna is by far the biggest in my opinion. So if it doesn't have that, and regardless if the episode isn't bad, it's a really huge missed opportunity. A big missed opportunity that, while it's not going to make me see the show as anything worse than what people make it out to be, I would actually be disappointed to the point that the chemistry between Lincoln and his sisters are really non-existent, and this show reinforcing the notion that family means everything doesn't mean much when the characters lack any expression when it comes to the surroundings. And with this case, when it comes to Lincoln and Luna, when it comes to the short form chemistry, there's a chance that they could drop the ball big time when it comes to people who are fans of Lincoln and Luna. Happy 55th birthday, Nika Futterman.